Speaking of doing it all, our Daily Faceoff insider, Frank Seravalli, he does it all for us at Daily Faceoff. You corrected us. You had Ekholm on your trade targets that November?
Yes. He was actually one of the first names mentioned that year as the Nashville Predators were starting to explore some of their options. And I think it was just about 2 years ago to the day. So, or close to it. Like, we always kind of do our first trade targets board around this time of year, and just so happens to have another fresh one now. But he was a shocking name, kind of still just a little bit ways into his extension. Hey, why is this guy popping up on the market? And it's because both interest and also the Preds had to do something a little different.
Yeah, they really did have to mix things up. And it was weird. Again, he was coming off the extension, all of that stuff. Frank, you know how much we love talking trade with you, and the YouTube chat loves it. And finally, we can get an answer from you of who should be the Oilers' #1 target at the deadline. But you have 8 D-men on your board. They all fit and slot in different kind of unique ways. Is there one on there that you think is the, call it, prototype of a defenseman that the Oilers might be looking for?
I don't necessarily think prototype, no. Because I think when you look at the varying nature of all these defensemen and you can work through them, I think the Oilers need a hybrid. I don't think they need someone that is just a stout defender like a Marcus Pettersson. I also don't think they need someone that is, someone that trends more toward being a 60-plus point defenseman like Mike Matheson was last year, 9th in the league in scoring. I think they need someone that's really well-rounded that can improve this team no matter what spot he's played in or what he's asked to do, what the expectations are set, and also which pair they play on, which side of the ice they're asked to play. They need a true well-rounded piece. That's how I view it. And that's to someone that is looking at it, they might say, oh, great fence-sitting answer. But I think they've got the top-end power play guy in Bouchard. I think they've got some other serviceable, like, true defenders. Where can you find someone that's in the middle?
Is Provorov maybe in the middle?
He's pretty close to it. I mean, think about the way his career started in Philly. He was a guy that proved kind of really quickly, hey, I could be a 40 to 50 point defenseman in this league. And then I don't know what happened with him. Like, he's still a relatively young guy. He's only 27. His confidence was shot. And then this trade happens and he's been no better in Columbus. Last year was the first year of that trade, and it was not pretty for anyone in Columbus. And now at this point, this juncture of his career, he's a minutes eater who's a physical guy at times when he wants to be, is a supreme skater in terms of ability. He's got a lot of interesting checks that he boxes that he checks, but he also just totally had a crisis of confidence with the puck.
Yeah. Interesting. We had a good debate with our boy Bruce Kurlock earlier in the week here when we were talking about David Jiricek. And I kind of said, hey, if that guy's available, is that maybe not this organization's make good for losing Philip Broberg? Like, just go get a young guy with upside and slide him in. And Bruce's counterpoint was kind of, if you're going to go spend assets on a guy, and I'm paraphrasing here, but are you going to trust David Jiricek in the playoffs this year? Because if you're going to go spend assets, it's got to be a guy you can use in the playoffs. Where do you come out on that idea?
I would tend to agree and say that the Oilers can't really place a bet and find out that you lose. I mean, I think that's actually a big part of the decision-making process when it came to Broberg in general. What if he doesn't play up to a level of a $4.6 million defenseman this year? And then next year's term, when you really can't find out the hard way. I think that's a really important consideration here is, yeah, there's the upside for Broberg, I think, to get to being a $6 million defenseman in relatively short order. But what if he's still playing at like $1.5 million or $2 million and he's on your cap for 4.6? You just can't have those miscalculated roster spaces that throw your entire cap system out of whack. Not in another year where you've got McDavid still to be signed and Bouchard still to be signed. And then at some point, you're going to have to address the goalie position and Skinner and his contract. Like, you've got all these different things that are coming down the pipe. You need to make sure that your house is in order from a cap perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we could see any of these guys go off the board anytime soon? Or is the market kind of quiet right now?
Liam, I would say I don't see anything that's necessarily imminent, meaning happening today or tomorrow or this week. I think there's been lots of conversation. And I think this goes back to something that I mentioned with Tyler on today's Daily Faceoff Live, which was when you have teams that are struggling or at the bottom of the standings and they'd like to make a move, if the price to get one of these guys is just the normal price, well, all of a sudden you're at the bottom of the standings and you want to do something, hey, it's 2x that now.
Yeah.
No one really wants to help. They disguise it as, hey, yeah, we'll make a deal with you. Let's do this, this, and this, and this will definitely help your team. But really what it does is it ends up setting you back. And the phrase that I always use is these GMs pretend like they're throwing you a lifeline or a life jacket, a life preserver, and really it's just an anvil disguised to sink your team.
Yeah. So you got another one?
No.
Okay, I got another one just on the market again. Like, you have 15 names listed. 8 of them are defensemen. I see that and go, is that good news for the Oilers? Could this maybe become a buyer's market in the defensive side of things?
There's so many teams that need it. I would say it's probably going to end up being neutral, because you have to also think that over this next period of time leading to March 7th, which the Oilers are on a little bit of a different time window than some other teams. Like, they're still trying to accrue as much space as possible and get to a spot where what's going on with Evander Kane and everything else. Like, there's a lot of considerations to make that I think it's probably in the Oilers' best interest to wait as close to March 7th as possible, unless there's something that they truly can't miss on, which of course you step up and do it. But I would say that, so there's going to be someone that probably strikes between now and January 1st on something. There's going to be a couple other guys that might resign. And then all of a sudden you're looking at it going, well, there's really only like 5 guys that we would consider. What is that going to be relative to price and value? That I think is going to be an important question. And so you look at the list, like, you tell me, is there someone on there that you go, yeah, 100%, that's who I want?
I really like the idea of Mike Matheson, because I think the Oilers need a pure puck mover to put with Darnell Nurse. And the fact he's a lefty/righty gives you the versatility of, if you really continue to like what you see with Nurse Kulak, keep them together and you go Matheson Emberson, and all of a sudden you have this really interesting dynamic third pairing. Or you play Matheson in the top 4 and he's your guy with Darnell Nurse, and you have this great structured top 4 with a good shutdown third pairing. I also love the fact he has another year. Like, Matheson's the guy for me.
Yeah, I mean, term, I think, is a really interesting and important consideration, and especially if you can get the Montreal Canadiens to retain, I think that's where you'd be really willing to pay a lot more for. One more year at 2.4, 2.45, like it's a great deal.
The only thing that's kind of puzzling for me, it makes it complicated. One, I think you're bang on. The Oilers got to wait till closer to the deadline, because you need to accrue and you need an answer on Evander Kane. But 2, if you're dealing with a team like Montreal, like, does Montreal still want picks, or do they want guys that are closer to competing? Like, the idea is, and you've talked with this, they want to take a step forward at some point here. They don't want to just keep accruing picks. The Oilers have no prospects. They have Savoy and O'Reilly. Yeah,
and Savoy's not getting it done, I don't think.
So like Sam O'Reilly?
Maybe. I think you're right, because I think that's exactly what the Montreal Canadiens are wrestling with internally. We don't even know if we can sign all these guys. And we've still got more picks to come. Like, they still have the Calgary Flames first round pick at some point. That's the extra one from the Sean Monahan deal, taking on his contract. Like, they've got other stuff still to be decided and determined. They're not against even using those in the short term to go out and get something that can help them in the here and now. So they're not a perfect, easy match trade partner in that sense. And just, it kind of, like, to give you another layer to it or another example, you know, I was asked last week during my travels about Vancouver and does one of their defensemen make sense? Does Bowen Byram make sense in Vancouver? And I'm like, the Canucks and Sabres are horrible trade partners. The Canucks only want to trade futures and prospects, and the Sabres don't really have any need for any of those things. So one thing you have to give to get, which is an important reminder for everyone, and I think even to GMs. And two, there has to be a match in terms of what you're giving has to be something that they're craving.
Yeah, 100%. Takes two to tango, they say, Liam.
Yeah, I've heard that one before.
I have two more areas I want to hit on with you quickly. Let's wrap up the trade talk. The divisional rival for the Oilers, the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, you got three guys on that list in Vetrano, Cam Fowler, and Trevor Zegras. What kind of spot is this Ducks organization in? Because they've been in a rebuild now for basically, I think it's been 5 seasons of them going through this process, and they're struggling. They're 8-2 to start the season. They haven't exactly, busted out of the gates here. And then you see a guy like Trevor Zegras, who it's like, okay, I thought he was a part of the solution. Why are they looking to move him? Like, it just feels like they're lacking in direction. Is that an accurate read on the Ducks right now?
I don't know if lacking in direction is accurate, but certainly lacking in progress. Like that I think is the best way to say it, is these young guys that have been this sort of collection of talent that they've, put together here. They're not progressing at the appropriate rate and showing you what it takes to be a competitive team in the NHL. They probably missed their window last year with Frank Vatrano, 37 goals, 60 points. He's off to a somewhat predictable slow start. That was such a statistical outlier season. When it comes to Cam Fowler, closing in on playing 1,000 games played, all with the Ducks. Think about the way he started his career in Anaheim. That's a team that went to a couple conference finals, was as competitive as any team in the NHL for a 10-year period of time. They've been struggling for a long time since. And so his game has gone in the opposite direction, as they've also taken more minutes off of his plate and his production has dipped. And then there's Zegras, who was, to your point, supposed to be part of this next wave, this guy that finished runner-up for Rookie of the Year and, had 2 mid-60 point seasons, and was like, this is one of the most skilled, passionate, creative players in the game that we're seeing not anywhere close to that. He looks like he hates playing hockey right now. He's the classic change of scenery guy. But if you're the Ducks, you're sitting there going, okay, Vatrano, sure, pending UFA, same thing. Fowler's got some term on his deal, but we can make both those things happen. What the heck do we do with Zegras, whose value is so suppressed right now based on his relative production, yet teams are going to be calling and interested because they see what he could do in the past? How can we possibly try and get this thing back on the rails?
You got one more on the trade stuff, or I wanted to ask about Bush?
I have one more on the trade one, Frank. And it's a team that's not mentioned on your list at all. It's the Chicago Blackhawks, if I'm correct. Like, obviously they're in their rebuild. Could you see them moving a guy like Connor Murphy? I know he's got a bit of a modified no trade clause, but in a market where you could probably get a lot for a right shot defenseman, with only 2 years left, could they move on from him?
I honestly, Liam, don't know how big the market would be for Murphy. I think at varying points, his game has been exposed. I think if they got the right offer, they'd probably do it. And there's still to be determined, to bring it back to another Edmonton connection. Everyone saw Taylor Hall healthy scratched over the weekend in Vancouver and the fallout from that. Look, I think there's a real chance that in the near future, Hall, as a pending UFA, ends up on our board, but they haven't received any calls on Taylor Hall, and they certainly aren't pushing to make something happen. They've realized that Connor Bedard and company need all the support that they can get. And so, for reasons similar to the Oilers, but different, it's in their best interest to wait as long as possible to make decisions on some of these guys if they need to.
I think that's honestly not a terrible call. Like, at the end of the day, like, if you're developing players, you can't just lose every single night, right? Like, you have to win games and be competitive in these games. They have a ton of picks already. Like, what's another couple more for them at the end of the day?
Yeah. What's another 3rd round pick going to do for the Blackhawks?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. Wanted to talk to you about Evan Bouchard. Last night, obviously, the Oilers get a nice bounce back win over the Senators. Bouchard scores an absolute beauty. And listen, the pitchforks were out for this guy, and they have been out for the last couple of weeks, and deservedly so. Like, he's made some mind-numbing mistakes. And the thing with Bouch is when he messes up, it looks like he's not trying. Like, it's frustrating to watch. And there were people saying, sit him, play him less, all this. The Oilers don't really have that luxury because of how their blue line is structured. But what do you make of kind of Bouchard's struggles here? Are we overreacting to maybe what's just a bad couple of months, or is it showing something?
No, I don't think anyone's overreacting. I don't think it's wrong to want to hold a player to a standard that you know that he can achieve. I mean, you think back to the playoffs last year and just how much of a dominant force he was, and you look at the overall body of work of the regular season last year and you say, it's not even just a points thing. Why can't the rest of this all come together at the same time? And I know that isn't always how it works, but to say that he's immune from criticism, and I think it's a great point too. I think, Liam, it was you that had made it at some point that he probably, like, if Leon Draisaitl can sit a few shifts, like, why can't Evan Bouchard? And I think not doing that was probably a mistake. And that said, like, yeah, sometimes his errors do look a little bit more glaring because of whatever you want to call it, urgency, posture, body language, compete, work ethic, use any one of those words that you want. I don't think anyone questions his commitment or his will to win. I think they just believed that Bouchard had gotten to another level in his game, approaching that sort of, hey, is this guy going to be in the Norris Trophy conversation at some point? And I think the way this season has unfolded to this point, yeah, there's some unbelievable talent there, but it hasn't all been put together yet to enter that conversation.
Yeah, and I think that is fair. He's also had a mind-numbing amount of shots blocked this year, which, I mean, I know Gregor's been all over that. But Frank, appreciate your time. First trade targets list of the year. It's officially that time of the season. We appreciate you popping on.
See you guys.
Bye, Frank Mechanical. Frank Seravalli on the Star Mechanical guest line. I'm having a day today, boys.
Frank Mechanical.
Now
that would be something I would call for help. I'd also Star Mechanical, but if Frank was coming to my house to help me fix things, that would be awesome.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.